Let's take stock a little bit more and talk about what's probable, or at least what's possible, as the government intensifies efforts to rescue Theresa May's Brexit deal after a number of Conservative backbenchers and the DUP said they wouldn't support it. It comes despite the Prime Minister's pledge to Tory MPs that she will quit if the withdrawal agreement is backed. And also let me remind you that attempts to find another way out of the deadlock were thrown into further disarray last night after MPs rejected all 8 alternatives to Mrs May's deal. Well, with me now here, I have Anand Menon from UK in a Changing Europe think tank, and also Tim Durrant from the Institute for Government. Good of you to join us this morning. Lots to talk about. Let's begin with those indicative votes last night. So none found a majority, Tim, but in some ways that wasn't expected anyway, and many people say, well, this was just the start of a process to try to find out what another acceptable option may be. So can that still run, that idea of narrowing down those indicative votes to find a way forward?
I think that was always the idea. You know, the people who proposed this, Oliver Letwin and other backbenchers, suggested that there might not be anything that gets a clear majority at this stage, and MPs could obviously vote for more than one option, as many of them did. Their hope is they want to use Monday next week to try and narrow it down further to signal where sort of a majority might arrive at in the Commons. So,
Anand, what you've got is this real battle now, if you like, between Theresa May trying to get backing for her deal and those who do support it, and Parliament as a whole, I guess.
Well, you've got a sort of threefold tussle at the moment going on, I suppose. There's the Prime Minister's deal camp, there's a softer Brexit than that deal camp, and there's a referendum camp. And I think that's where the action is at the moment between those three camps. Because one of the surprising things for me from the votes last night is the softest Brexit option, the Norway option, the Common Market 2 option, got very, very little support. And that tells me that actually things are polarising in Parliament, that, you know, people who want a referendum refuse to vote for the very softest kind of Brexit because actually only a referendum will do. So as things drop off the table and things crystallise, I think Tim's absolutely right. When we get to next week, we might see a potential compromise taking shape.
Yes, because that sort of, if you like, crystallisation and concentration of the thought process must surely come if it comes to an option between two choices which are pretty much polar opposites, really.
Absolutely, and I think the thing to remember is, you know, the referendum idea, that's a process, that's not an outcome of where we end up with the EU. A lot of the other options that were voted on yesterday, so the Common Market 2.0 idea, the customs union, and even no deal, you know, those are sort of end states, whereas the referendum is just a way of approving whatever is eventually negotiated, so they're quite different questions.
And Anand, if you factor in then MPs who abstained,
yep,
that could make a big difference, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of MPs are holding fire. A lot of MPs are trying to keep as many options open as possible. I saw Lisa Nandy on Twitter today saying the reason why she's abstained on some things is this isn't the time to be cutting options out. Well, Monday, I think, is the time to start cutting options out, because one of the problems with the Brexit process is no option ever seems willing to die. However many times it's defeated in Parliament, however little support it seems to get, it won't go away. And we need to start whittling things down. And, of course, the clock really is ticking, because the 12th of April is not that far away.
It really isn't. So, and just picking up on that last thought, what do you think is the most probable way forward? Oh, sorry to ask you that question. I mean, it's a difficult question. Lots of people are trying to answer that. But, I mean, if Theresa May's deal isn't voted through on the third time of asking, if indeed it does go to a vote for a third time, do you think really that one of these indicative vote options could be the way ahead? Or are we more likely talking about a general election, potentially?
I think we are. We're certainly, I think, entering lengthy extensions of the Brexit process territory, because Parliament isn't going to be able to get this signed, sealed and delivered, I don't think, in the absence of Mrs May's deal in time for the 12th of April. We're going to have to go back and ask for an extension. The problem is twofold. One, we need to find something Parliament can agree on that Mrs May will agree on. Otherwise, she might just say, I'm not going to do that. Then we're facing vote of no confidence territory. We've also got to find something Parliament can agree on that the EU will give us. Because for all the talk of these options, we still don't know. If we went to the EU and said, can we have a customs union? They're not going to say, yes, sign on the dotted line. They're going to say, yes, but there are a few things we'd like to talk about around that, involving rules, minimum standards, because you're a big economy. You're not like Turkey. We're going to have to treat you differently. So there's plenty of negotiating to be done, not just in that building over there, but in Brussels as well.
So, Tim, would you agree with that, you know, given that we know that there isn't a majority for a no-deal option. The majority of MPs want to avoid that. Are we looking at a longer extension, do you think, rather than what some people would refer to as crashing out?
I think that's right. I mean, the Prime Minister almost said that as much, that she will not take the country out of the EU with no deal unless the House approves that, and the House of Commons yesterday signalled again very strongly that it doesn't want to leave with no deal. Under the terms of the extension agreed at the European Council last week, what they said is the UK can have until the 22nd of May if it passes the deal this week, or it's until the 12th of April unless it comes forward with a new suggestion. And that's what we're all waiting to see. If, as we expect, the meaningful vote isn't passed this week, what is the government's proposal for that long extension going to look like? What will it mean about European elections, sort of maintaining EU membership for a much longer period than anyone expected is going to be difficult, as Anand says, to agree with the Europeans as well as here.
Of course, there's a question mark over whether Theresa May will bring her deal back for a third vote if she doesn't think that she can get backing for it. At the moment, we know there's a group of ERG, those most ardent Brexiteers, MPs who say they will not support it. The DUP group hasn't given it their support either. What impact do you think those Labour MPs who would have backed Theresa May's deal, Anand, what impact do you think the thought of her deal passing and a more ardent Brexiteer becoming the leader of the Conservative Party, what do you think that's doing to the calculations of Labour MPs?
Well, that's always been one of the problems for Labour MPs. I think many of them can live with the withdrawal agreement. What they really don't want to see is a Boris Johnson or a Jacob Rees-Mogg taking over after that's been signed and sealed and negotiating a trade deal that whittles away our rights and things like that. So there is an amendment that's been suggested by Lisa Nandy, which gives Parliament a vote on the mandate for any future trade negotiations. So Labour MPs have been trying to find ways around that. From what I'm hearing in Parliament at the moment, I don't think that is going to be the way forward to get enough Labour MPs to support this. I think the DUP are key. At the moment, I don't see a way that the Prime Minister's deal can pass. Though I noticed with interest, I think last night on the Brexit Cast podcast, right at the end, Laura Kunsberg said, there's still a chance the DUP might change their minds. It would be the mother of all U-turns at this point, but who knows?
I guess that's a fair description. It would be the mother of all U-turns at this point because, the DUP has said it will never abstain on a vote on the union. Jacob Rees-Mogg referred to them as the guardians of the union. Yeah. And the backstop issue is really sacred territory for the EU. They're not budging on that, are they?
They're not, and fundamentally the deal that the Prime Minister negotiated hasn't changed since it was first published in November of last year. There's been a lot of talk around it, there's been kind of reassurances and extra details added, but fundamentally the idea of the backstop is still the same as it was 4 months ago now.
So here we are today, speaking again about what's possible, but actually not really any clearer, as are, MPs aren't, in the country people aren't. We're not any clearer on what the precise way ahead is, are we?
Well, I would qualify that a little bit. I think people are being a bit harsh on Parliament at the moment. I think we've started a process. Parliament wasn't designed to take decisions that government should be taking, so it's difficult for them, but we are inching forward. We're not striding towards the end post by any means, but we are inching forwards, I think, and Monday will be absolutely fundamental in that when the next round of indicative votes take place.
Let's see what that brings. Anand and Tim, thank you both very much.